Hey guys, and welcome back. Thanks for joining me in the second of this video series on the Walnut Bedside Table that I'm producing. What I had finished with in the last video was the creation of these front spars, these horizontal members that are connecting to the legs of the table. These are joined to the legs with mortise and tenon joints, and then I'm going to put some spars in kind of a similar fashion that are going to extend back along the bottom edge of the two sides where that butterfly joined side panel is going to install. What I've done is I typically will use a right angle, a small square that I've got, and then a marking knife so that I can actually run the knife edge up against the bottom piece of the wood and transcribe that around the corner of a piece, especially as something like these legs. Now that I've got the groove length measured out based on what I had done with the marking knife, I'm cutting a groove doing a blunt plunge cut with my router. Now I'm not running this all the way out to the full length of the groove because I'm going to rely on a small chisel to get a more precise cut at the ends. But for the majority of the length of the groove, I can save myself some time by doing this plunge cut method. As you might expect, you don't want to bring the wood down vertically onto the router bit, because the router bit doesn't have a way of clearing the wood that's being cut. So instead you want to bring it in at a slight angle and kind of gradually work it into the full depth of the plunge cut. This will allow the wood to clear and should keep your router bit a little bit sharper without smoking the wood. Now this back leg, the one that's on the right on my workbench here, has actually got two grooves in it, and that was not intentional. Lucky for me, that second groove in the lighter section of wood is positioned inwards in my assembly, so it's hidden by the cavity of the cabinet and shouldn't be visible at the top level. Now that I've got one of the legs set up how I think it should be, I'm doing a dry fit with one of the side skirts that I've already created. The intent is that I want to measure out how long the side panels need to be. As you recall, I had done the edge glue of those two pieces in the previous video, and now I need to actually cut them from the rough stock size down to the size that's going to fit in the legs along with the skirt and those spars that I had shown earlier. So at first I'm just cutting it to length. That's a simple dimension to cut. The next step that I'm going to do is I want to keep that butterfly look centered in the piece. So I'm taking a measurement from my glue line, which is difficult to see now, and then measuring out left and right an equal amount so that that center line is kept center in the finished piece. Initially I have to cut one of the edges nice and straight so that I can pull a good dimension, but generally speaking I'm trying to keep it as centered as possible. As we've done with so many other steps on this project, I'm liking to do another dry fit of the different wood pieces before getting too far along. I think that I've got the side panels cut to the right width and the right length to fit into the grooves of the legs. I'll check that I've got the top skirts cut to the right length and that all of the mortise and tenon joints are firm but not too difficult to install. And then I'll double check that the legs and everything come flush to where they need to be at the top edge of this table. I know it looks a little bit wobbly right now, and that's okay. I'm not using any glue at the moment. This again is just a dry fit of all the different wood pieces prior to getting to the next step. I'm doing this so that at this point I can start pulling dimensions for the piece that I'm going to have to put together for the back of this side table. But it's a nice step that I like to keep on doing, as I've mentioned, because it helps me visualize how things are coming together and helps me tune the wood prior to getting to a glue up point. Now that I've got the dimensions pulled from the dry fit up of the whole assembly, I'm doing the last step to the legs prior to doing any kind of gluing, and that's to add a slight taper to the bottom edge of each one of these legs. Now, if you recall, the legs are 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, and what I'm doing is tapering it down to only a 1-inch square at the very foot of each of the legs, and that taper extends up the leg by about 5 inches. Since each of these legs is positioned on a different corner of the whole assembly, obviously, my taper for each of them is going to be slightly different. Since I'm only cutting 2 of the 4 faces to create the taper, this taper is only going to be on the inward portions, the inward facing corners of each of the legs. What I like to use for something that's repeatable like this is I like to clamp a block at the right position along with the right angle on my miter saw so that I can easily repeat this for multiple cases. Now the glue up of this back panel looks a little goofy. I was running low on wood, and so I had to use just some small 1/4-inch veneer pieces in order to extend the wood and stretch it to the length I needed. I don't think it looks too terrible, and in truth I don't much care, just because it's the back portion of the piece where nobody sees it. One of the things I wanted to try to perfect here, though, was filling in some of my glue lines. In some cases there are slight gaps in the wood, and that's understandable. The idea here, though, is to hide it as best as possible. And one of the techniques I like to use is to fill that gap with a little bit of glue, let it get a little tacky, and then sand right over top of it. As long as you've got some good sandpaper and the glue's not totally wet, the glue will hold on to the dust that you sand off and should help this blend in pretty nicely, filling in the cracks. As with any sanding, especially power sanding, you don't want to dwell in one area for too long because you'll end up creating a bit of a concave shape to the wood. So once you get that blue line pretty well sanded out, feather that out a little bit so that it's not noticeable. Well, as you can see, I'm focusing on the rear section of this bedside table first, getting the rear assembled legs to the panel. And the idea here is that I want to make all my mistakes in the least visible spot, so I'm doing my practice run, my first glue up on the back portion. That way I'm hoping that at least I've got things pretty well nailed down and a system in place for when I go and focus on the front portion where it's going to be a much more visible face of the assembly. Now the front portion is going to be assembled pretty much the same as the rear, minus the different paneling. So I'm just going to speed this up a bit and save us all a little bit of time. I always find the glue up phase to be a little bit unnerving, and that's because I hate the mess that the glue brings, and I know that it's the last chance I've got to adjust some of these wood pieces and get everything straight and square. I'm deciding to work on it this way. I've got the panels being installed into the rear wall of this bedside table first. Then I'm going to prepare the front portion with enough glue in it, and in an attempt to keep it from dripping everywhere, I'm leaving that down and bringing the back panel onto it. I can kind of shuffle those side walls into place and get everything firmed up with a few taps of the hammer. Now these lower spars that are going to go onto the side panels are somewhat structural. I'm gluing them in place, but more intended to keep the side panels from deflecting as I clamp on things. So while there is a benefit to having them, I'm not going to do a mortise and tenon joint on those little side spars like I mentioned earlier. I decided it was more than probably what they required. Now before any of the glue runs harden, I can wipe these up with a little bit of water and a rag. There's no reason I can't wash things off before it gets too dry. Now this is an application where a palm-size router would probably be better suited for the task. Nevertheless, I've got a 1/2 inch roundover bit on my normal DeWalt router here. I'm just adding a nice curve to the front face of these 4 legs. I'm turning my focus now to the tabletop of this bedside table. It's the piece of 3 walnut edge glued pieces that I had described earlier. And what I'm doing is I'm adding a slight chamfer to the front face and then the 2 edges of the tabletop. This is about a 25-26 degree angle that I'm placing on here, and it leaves about a 1/2 inch front edge before tapering back to where the legs and side skirts will be. Now my table saw isn't quite set up for this, but I do keep a larger piece of plywood on hand that I can screw into place and add a little bit more vertical support as I'm running it through the blade. Well, I think we've made some good progress on the assembly of this bedside table. As you've seen, we've put together much of the structure of the bedside table, and what we'll cover in the next video is the construction of the drawers as well as their installation into the main structure. I think this is probably where we're going to leave it for now though. I'll let you guys get back to your work as I continue mine, and we'll catch you on the next one. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content like this. Take care, everyone.